Do I want to talk about the Heritage Foundation this week? No, but we have a schedule to maintain. And if we keep going at this rate, we might finish by the end of the year. I'm not even fucking kidding. That might be where we finish. But I'll say this, right? I don't think that the Heritage Foundation is happy with all of the blue wins across multiple different states this week, across multiple different levels of government. It is showing the diversity of the party, not just in terms of thought, but in terms of race and gender and class and creed and all of these things that really, really irks the people at the Heritage Foundation, right? It's also showing the diversity of thought with the Working Families Party, Democratic Socialists of America, and your classic Democrats and even your very moderate Democrats. It's showing how big this umbrella is. So I'm sure the Heritage Foundation is pissed, which frankly makes me happy. Welcome back. We're in our fifth episode of our Heritage Foundation series. We're going to talk about the fourth mandate, and also the Contract for America and the Index on Economic Freedom. Because the fourth mandate, let's recapping a tiny bit, right? Because George H.W. Bush gets ousted after one term, right? He goes against his campaign promise. He raises taxes. He's also the leader of the he's the commander-in-chief during Desert Storm. And Desert Storm is very net positive from the Heritage Foundation's perspective, right? Anytime that we get to use our military and might and try to get shit done across the world, which we don't usually actually get it done, right? But he led that big coalition, and they liked Desert Storm, right? But they did not like that he raised those taxes and he went up against his own campaign promise and all of those things. And then, of course, he lost, right? So we're moving into these Bill Clinton years. This is a hostile president to the Heritage Foundation. He's not a Republican. So what do? The mandate for leadership number 4 is actually a direction towards Congress. Mandate 4 is turning ideas into action. Now, again, from Edward Lee's book, this is one of our big sources here, Edward Lee's book, The Power of Ideas. A couple of different things happen, right? One, they shift into focusing on Congress. 2, they shift towards the culture wars, the index of cultural indicators, right? And this is where they focus on fighting about teen pregnancy, illegitimate families, making sure that people get less divorces, and all of these things that formulate some of these weird arguments we have today. Obviously, drug use, suicide, things of that nature, right? Culture wars are specifically around what's happening in the culture, if you don't know what it means, right? Obviously, liberal Americans, libertarian Americans, conservative Americans, and of course, Christian nationalist Americans have very different ideas about what the culture should look like. A lot of Americans don't really care, right? Live and let live vibes. But conservatives, and specifically Christian nationalists, which I think the Heritage Foundation fits into that category now, is they're going to push to make sure the culture looks the way they want it to look, right? It has to look the way they deem it appropriate. And I think that's really important to note, right? So this index on cultural indicators is going to talk about all the things that are worse off now in the 90s than they were in the 60s, including teen pregnancy, including illegitimate families, including single parents and divorce and drug use and all of these things. At the same time, we get our first Republican Speaker of the House in over 40 years. His name is Newt Gingrich. And Newt writes a book called The Contract for America. Now, 397 Republican nominees for the election cycle in 94 stand on the steps of the Capitol on September 27th, 1994, and they pledge their fealty to this fucking book, The Contract for America. Again, like I said, that Heritage Foundation mandate number 4 moved away from presidential stuff, but into more take ideas into action, focusing on Congress. And then Newt Gingrich puts this book out, and the vast majority of the ideas in it are coming directly from the Heritage Foundation. They have a plan. They've got literally an 8-point plan. But on September 27, 1994, they stand up and they swear their fealty to it. They say, if we don't follow this, kick us out. And 1994 is a midterm election. It's a referendum on the Bill Clinton administration. They have this outline for what they're going to do moving forward. here's the thing, right? This Contract for America comes out. It's written by Newt Gingrich. We have the fourth mandate for leadership, which is specifically directed at Congress. And then because it's a midterm election, it's a referendum on Bill Clinton's administration. Republicans sweep. They take control of both the Senate and the House of Representatives. They pick up 8 Senate seats. They pick up 54 seats in the House. Newt Gingrich is the House Majority Leader. And this is a moment in time that actually, with this Contract for America, with Index of Cultural Indicators, and with the Index of Economic Freedom, all put out by the Heritage Foundation, this is a moment where they realize how they can actually truly weaponize Congress and make sure that when they get the majority, they can do what they want. Because as always, Congress passes the laws. They write the bills, air quotes, they write the bills, they present them, they debate them, they pass them through the House, through the Senate, and then it gets signed by the president, right? And if you have a supermajority, you can override the veto of the president, right? And these ideas that they had were actually like not all bad. One was like, make sure that Congress is actually subject to the laws that other Americans are subject to. Not terrible. Another one was bringing in an audit firm to audit for damage, waste, fraud, right? And this is an external audit firm, like PwC, KPMG, or Deloitte, something like that. Would we have to make sure they weren't donating to the Heritage Foundation? Probably. At least in the 90s, it was a little bit harder for these corporations to donate an unlimited amount to the candidates like it is now because of Citizens United. Any hoozles, we move on. They wanted to limit congressional time on committees, right? Like if you're a leader, you couldn't be on a committee for as long as forever, right? They wanted to limit proxy voting or eliminate proxy voting in committees, things like that, right? They wanted to cut the number of House committees, right? You can tell this is from the Heritage Foundation because they're still trying to limit federal government. They also made a promise during the first 100 days to put through at least 10 bills. At least 10 bills, right? Most of the bills get shot down in the Senate, including one getting vetoed by the president, right? Because with this index of cultural indicators, plus the Contract for America, Congress shows up and they want to make sure that they can get rid of illegitimate children and make sure that teen pregnancy goes down. And the way they're going to do this is by limiting welfare. Eliminating welfare for women under the age of 18 who have children. That's how you get rid of teen pregnancy. That's the bill that Bill Clinton vetoes. Now, he will sign a bill into law in 1996 that requires the SNAP benefit receivers and welfare receivers to work. If they're able-bodied, it will also be the 2 years on, 2 years off rule. So if you think that people who are getting SNAP benefits aren't working, you're incorrect, and they have been for over almost 30 years because that's when it started in 1996. And you cannot be on SNAP in perpetuity. That's what that law does. But he originally vetoes the 1994 law, which is a part of this 100 days of the Contract for America, right? They also want to give married couples tax credits who are having kids, right? They're trying to get rid of illegitimate children. They also do try to add a constitutional amendment that actually does term limits. Crazy. They pass a law around the war on drugs and the war on crime, increasing budgets for prisons, increasing a lot of other things that perpetuate some of the issues that were begun under George H.W. Bush. And, this is, again, a really defining moment in U.S. history as it pertains to how to weaponize Congress. And the Republicans do it really well, and they do it really well every single time that they have a majority. Another one of their really big goals in this Contract for America was making it so that you could not pass a law to raise taxes unless there is a 3/5 majority. 3/5 majority. So it is no longer a simple majority, it is a 3/5 majority. And I think this is a really important moment in time because other states around the country are going to actually leverage this, right? This is a move that states use, right? A 3/5 majority to pass constitutional amendments. Specifically, Florida comes to mind recently because of the abortion amendment. 57% of Florida who voted in 2024 voted to add and codify abortion rights in the Florida Constitution. But they changed the law to make it 3/5. And that's 10 years, 12 years after the Contract for America is written. And this idea of changing the tax structure can only be changed if 3/5 of the House votes for it. So it is important to understand that every single thing that we see from this Heritage Foundation, from the Contract for America, from the Index for Cultural Indicators, from all of these different publications and from all of the children of the Heritage Foundation gets extrapolated into our 50 states, gets extrapolated in an effort to not protect people, not protect individual Americans or citizens or women or children or anything like that, but to make it harder for change to happen. And it starts because of this tax structure. It's important to note that this bill specifically failed. They were trying to change the framework for the amount of votes that you need in Congress to 3/5 to vote on a tax increase, right? So rather than just that simple majority, you would need 60%, 3/5, so 60 in the Senate, etc. And it actually failed because one Republican senator voted against it. We're going to keep this series going. The mandates for leadership for George W. Bush's time are actually quite small, but we will get into it next week. Thank you. And part of that comes from the mastermind of the Heritage Foundation. And I still am looking for the Democratic version of this. We don't have one. And the crazy thing is I recognize it in myself, and I think a lot of liberal people as well, is that we're very highly educated, but we cannot practically turn this into something that is useful sometimes. I'm doing this Heritage Foundation series, and you'll find at the end ways that we can combat the Heritage Foundation. But it's so, I mean, I hear myself doing it where I'm just talking about facts and figures instead of saying what we can do now. But I have to get through all of these fucking things